Ever wondered what you could smuggle into breast implants, whether oxygen could be toxic, and what would happen if you shoved your hand down someone's throat? Well, if you have, you're in the right place. Hi, I'm Dr. Maddie, and today I'll be fact-checking the JoJo Part 6 anime, Stone Ocean. We're going to be scoring Araki on his scientific accuracy. I'll be asking whether he's passed the standardised acknowledged pass rate of 69% to be labelled a truly accurate anime. Now, spoiler warning ahead for those of you who haven't caught up with the remaining episodes. For those of you who've remained, if you're ready, let's begin.
持ち込む方法はいくらでもあんだよ。は、まさかおっぱい？その胸シリコンで一緒に金を入れてるとか？縫い目ちっちゃいだろ？取り出すときちょっと血が出るけど。
Okay, so starting off by smuggling money into prison using your breasts. Is it possible? Definitely. In fact, in 2016, a Colombian woman was arrested in Frankfurt airport after she was found to be smuggling a kilo of cocaine in her breast implants. Airport officials became suspicious when the lady started to report severe pain and after they found fresh operation scars under the lady's breast during a search. It just goes to show, if there's a will, there's a way.
それより喉が渇いた。一口ちょうだい。
ダメよ。10% のカクテルドリンクだもん。
大丈夫だって。
Okay, so is there a legal limit for drink driving? Yes, of course there is, and it's based off the level found in your breath, blood and urine. The most commonly assessed is the roadside breath test, whose limit in the UK is 35 micrograms per 100 ml of breath. But how does this translate into the amount of alcohol consumed? Well, that's a very tricky question because we all metabolize alcohol differently based off of our age, weight, gender, and whether we've eaten anything or not. The safest bet is to listen to Jolyne and not drink and drive at all.
に戻ればあるって言ったわよね。戻ったんでしょ。今ある。うるせえぞグダグダと
Okay, so coins are actually made up of a combination of nickel and copper, and grinding them up in this way and then ingesting them can lead to an acute toxicity, leading to severe nausea, diarrhea and vomiting. So yes, this would be a mean and realistic way of getting your own back on an enemy. Don't try this at home.
Johngalliへ現在ここの男子官に収監されている元軍人軍風速20メートルの中でも仕事をこなしたというスナイパー白内障のせいで視力がかなり低下しているらしい。
Okay, so a cataract is where the lens of the eye develops cloudy patches. This can result in blurred, misty vision and eventual blindness. Now, the commonest cause of this is aging, but other factors might be genetic, if you're diabetic, or if you're using steroids in the long term. Whatever the cause in this case, it seems ironic that he's a sharpshooter.
筋肉は信用できない。皮膚が風にさらされると筋肉はストレスを感じ微妙な伸縮を繰り返す。それは肉体ではコントロールできない動きだ。
So the muscle twitching he's describing here is something that we call myoclonus. Now, this can be a normal response to outside stimulus such as light, noise or temperature change, but it can also be a sign of an underlying disease process like epilepsy or Parkinson's. It may even be a response to sleeping, where we call them hypnic jerks. Nonetheless, placing your elbow down on a flat, firm surface can help to eliminate the impact they have on your hands, and is a common practice that snipers use.
これ何かわかる？
人間の骨だ。しかも成人女性の仙骨という骨盤部分だ。 表面の状態から見て酸のようなもので溶かされている。
So yes, this looks like the sacrum, the lowest part of the spinal vertebra. Now Jotaro is quite quick off the mark there, determining that this is a female pelvis, and that is because he's identified a few characteristic features. The main differentiating characteristic is that the female sacrum is flatter than the male's to allow the baby to pass through during childbirth. Jotaro has definitely earned that doctor title.
何よそれ。まさかその胸。そんなどうして？
いけ、ジョリーン。血が少し出てるだけだ。すぐに後から行く。
So Jotaro, this isn't just a little bleeding. A bullet hitting you at the center of the chest has likely ruptured your aorta, the largest blood vessel carrying the most amount of blood in the body. If this was hit, you'd likely be dead in under a minute.
撃たれたからって傷は浅いのよ。急所じゃないのよ。でもどうして心臓が止まっているのよ。
Good, so Jolyne has assumed that Jotaro's dead and his heart has stopped, so she started with chest compressions as part of her CPR. Don't forget that the ratio of chest compressions to breaths is 30:2, and you want to pump at a rate of between 100 to 120 compressions per minute. So pick your favourite JoJo theme song that keeps you to that rate of chest compressions.
さっきまさか高熱のせいで目が乱視に
So, without knowing that she has a stand power, she's assumed that high fever has given her astigmatism. Now, this is a structural problem of the eye where it's shaped more like a rugby ball than it is a football. And as a result, it can give rise to blurred vision, headaches, and eye strain. Now, a high fever can't really lead to a change in the structure of your eyeball. However, it can lead you to become quite dehydrated, which could account for the double vision. I wonder whether this is actually an error with the translation.
熱は下がったようだな。自分の方に戻ってよし。
掃除当番いたよね。あいつ模範囚？名前知ってる？
それをしてどうする？
I have one question. Why do all anime doctors look like nerds? I mean, there's many examples of anime doctors that look far cooler than this guy.
電気だ。やろう。電気を自分の体に流しているぞ。人間の皮膚の表面に100ボルトそこらの電気を流しただけではなかなか死ねない。電気の抵抗があるからだ。
And that's true, everybody's body has a level of electrical resistance. And that's the force that counteracts the flow of current. Now, certain tissues like bones and fat have the greatest resistance, whereas muscles and nerves have the least. So your body composition is really important in determining your electrical resistance.
もし再び乾電子を選ぶというのなら、今奴はきっと食塩水を探しているだろう。食塩水をかければ伝導率はほぼ 100% になる。電気は完璧に心臓を貫き、焼くことができる。
Now, the majority of the body's resistance comes from the skin. The dead, dry layer of cells making up the epidermis are not a very good conductor of electricity. But if you add a liquid like saline, which is made up of freely moving charged ions, then this allows an electrical charge to be carried within the solution. So covering yourself with a solution like this before an electrocution would lead to a quick death.
この肝臓を闇市場で売れば残り590ドルの代わりにはなるな。
Okay, so the Marilyn Manson stand only values the liver at around $590. But to be honest, on the black market, you'd be looking at least 100 times that amount. The most expensive organs are the heart and the lungs, and the cheapest being your corneas.
空城城太郎博士の体は潜水艇回収の後、ここダラスではありませんが、ある場所で安全に保護された状態になっております。医学的に言って生命反応は全く。
So in this scene, they use the term medically unresponsive, but does this mean that Jotaro is dead? Well, no, death is measured by looking at your vital signs, such as your breathing rate and your heartbeat. Responsiveness, on the other hand, can tell you how poorly somebody is. And in medicine, we use a scale called the Glasgow Coma Scale. What this looks at is your best motor response, verbal response, and eye movements to various stimuli. So if Jotaro is completely unresponsive, he'd be scoring a 3 out of 15, which tells me he's either critically unwell, dying, or has suffered from brainstem death.
無重力になると体内の血液は急に頭部にたくさん集まってくる。皮膚と骨の間が血液でブヨブヨに膨れている。ムーンフェイスってやつだ。
So yes, in gravity, water normally pools in your feet, and this accounts for swollen feet after a long journey. Now fortunately, our calves work as pumps to squeeze this water back up to the heart where it needs to be. Otherwise, we'd have permanently fat feet. However, in zero gravity, blood flow has a greater propensity to flowing to the head, and there are no countermeasures in place to bring it back where it needs to be. Hence why you get a moon face. Fortunately, this does correct itself when you come back down to Earth.
私が触れるものは全て無重力になる。空気無重力になると空気はとどまれない。周りの重力に引かれて逃げていってしまう。塞がないと隙間を目張りしないとこのままでは窒息してしまう。
So basically, the reason we can breathe is because we have an atmosphere which is created by gravity and other forces compressing air into a dense enough area that we can actually breathe it in. Now, if you take away gravity, the air disperses itself and creates a vacuum, making it far more difficult for us to breathe anything in. Hence why you suffocate in space.
真空状態だと血液は熱湯のように沸騰する。無重力で真空なら人間の体は窒息より前に20秒で血液はカラカラに干からびてしまうらしい。
So yes, this is true. If you were exposed to space without a spacesuit, your blood, eyeballs and your bile would furiously boil, and this is due to the low pressure in space that lowers the boiling point of water. So unfortunately your body would rapidly fizz up, getting rid of all of your heat, before freezing completely.
このカエルは猛毒を持つヤドクカエルじゃないのか。その毒が体内に入ったら何秒もかからず心臓や呼吸器系を停止させる。それが今
So yes, this is the infamous dart frog, and I actually made a whole video about this. I'll leave a link down below in the description. Basically, they're called dart frogs because hunters would cover the tips of their darts with the frog's poison to help kill their prey. The dart frog's poison is highly potent and attacks the nervous system, leading to muscle contractions, convulsions, coma, and even death.
落ち着くんだ。素数を数えて落ち着くんだ。素数は1と自分の数でしか割ることのできない孤独な数字。私に勇気を与えてくれる。
So interestingly, the counting of numbers, specifically prime numbers, has been characterized in many different mental health conditions, from OCD through to autism. Now, it's not completely understood why people do this, but it's thought that it has some element of cleanliness and simplicity in the way that prime numbers can only be divided by themselves and the number 1.
俺は何か飲みたかったんじゃねえ。食らいたかったんだ。食ってこの渇きを癒したかったんだ。
肉体の破壊ができるのか。
Okay, so I'm assuming that Araki wanted to make Sport's maximum stand capable of creating zombies. But can this be explained medically? Well, I guess the closest thing that we have to something like this is the disease called Kuru. Now, this was a prion brain disease which was transmitted through the cannibalistic practices of tribes within Papua New Guinea. The disease would afflict those who consumed the brains of the elders of the community, manifesting in symptoms of discoordination, muscle weakness, and slurred speech, resembling that of a zombie.
いや、癖というより症候群と言い換えるよ。何でも分解したくなるという症候群。分解しなくてはいられない性癖なんだ。
Now, the fact that he was wanting to disassemble things doesn't necessarily mean that he has a syndrome. However, if he had a compulsion to do this despite not wanting to, then it may be considered a trait of a syndrome like OCD, which is fairly common in children of this age.
それがサバイバーだ。ただ怒らすだけだ。人の脳の大脳変影系の闘争的な本能をほんのちょっとの力で呼び覚ますだけ。
Okay, so the limbic system, which is mentioned here, is part of the brain that's involved in behavioural and emotional responses. Specifically, it's those behaviours that we need to survive, such as feeding, reproducing, and our fight and flight response. So if the survivor stand is triggering this part of the brain specifically, then it activates our need to survive. And we all know how that goes with survival of the fittest.
どうやら食べられるらしいわ。このキノコ。結構いいぞ。
I hope that those are one of the 39 edible forms of mushrooms. In fact, on closer inspection, they look like a charcoal burner mushroom, which are the most common wildly harvested mushroom variety. Had they not been, this might have become an even more bizarre adventure.
筋肉の美しい輝きがこの監視の強い部分ということだとするなら、こいつの今見えるこの足。 私が攻撃を加えた足だ。聞いているということか。
Okay, so this was pretty cool when Jolyne was facing off against the prison guard. I like the attention that was given to the musculature when the X-ray vision was applied, and I also like the way that you see this area of inflammation spreading across the guard's knee. Very well animated. Yeah, this is one of those injuries that only the JoJo series would think of doing. But now, having seen this, whenever I go to my jiu-jitsu training, I'm very protective of my feet. But nail eversion injuries like this are fairly common, and I see them mainly in manual workers. I have to say though, they're more in the fingers than they are in the toes. So I think the nerves he's referring to here are part of the sympathetic nervous system. These directly stimulate the kidneys, which activate something called your RAS system. This leads to the release of aldosterone, a hormone produced by your adrenal glands. Now, it's this hormone that's responsible for salt absorption and water retention. And I think Araki has taken this concept to the extreme, with their bodies absorbing so much of their water that they actually drown.
骨や肉をバラバラに分解した。そして組み立て直して、まるでスプリングのように成形した。肉と骨のサスペンション。
A creative way of giving someone springy legs, but unfortunately it's just not possible. The closest thing we have to something like this is a condition such as rickets, where you get bowing of your legs as a result of vitamin D deficiency.
しかし筋肉の数値が落ちている。記憶が全くないということは、当然生きる目的というものも彼には存在しないというわけだ。そうなるとあっという間に筋肉が退化していく。
Yeah, so this is something we commonly see in people who are hospitalized for any length of time. Their proximal muscles, those closest to the trunk, just wither away. Some studies have shown that the rate of loss of your muscles is between 4 to 5% per week spent in hospital. So for any of you couch potatoes out there, this is the time to get up and work out.
知っているか？人間の肋骨の数は12対24本。男でも女でも背が高くても低くても違いはないんだ。
Yep, so we're all born with 24 ribs, or 12 pairs of ribs to be more accurate. However, there are some medical conditions where you can be born with extra ribs. For example, a cervical rib, where you have an extra one found between the collarbone and the base of your neck. Otherwise, some people with Down syndrome can be born with an extra rib or a missing 12th rib. However, it doesn't seem to have any major clinical implications.
ジョリーン、刑務所側医師はあんたが懲罰冒頭でのショックのあまり一時的な記憶障害に陥っており、3つ以上の事柄を新しく記憶することができないと死んだ。
Yep, so this is a real condition. It's called post-traumatic amnesia or post-traumatic confusional state. And it occurs as a stage of recovery after a significant head injury. And the scary thing about this condition is it can last anywhere between a couple of minutes through to a few weeks or even a few months. And during this period, people are unable to lay down new memories or unable to recall day-to-day events. A very bizarre condition, I'm sure you'll agree.
そう違う。だがこのハサミはあとほんの1ミリで私の神経を切断できる位置にある。偶然致命傷になる場所を避けて突き刺さったんだ。
Being a previous head and neck surgeon, I would say that a pair of scissors in your throat is a pretty fatal injury. So sorry, Pucci, I'm going to have to disagree with you on this one.
両方のよう、まぶたがストーンと急に落ちてきちまったよ。いつもこうなるんだ。診断では。
Now we call an involuntary closing eye ptosis, and it can be a sign of many different diseases. However, with all the doctors excluding any underlying disease process, we have to consider whether it's a functional issue. And the only time I've seen something like this is where somebody's been dealing with severe anxiety or stress, but we don't fully understand the mechanism as to why.
ロッツという生物のことを聞いたことがあるか？ 別名スカイフィッシュとも呼ばれる。肉眼では認識できず
Yeah, skyfish. I'd heard about these, and apparently they're an optical illusion. Now, some people believe that these are extra-dimensional beings or extraterrestrial aliens, and some even think that they're UFOs. But the actual scientific belief is that they're as a result of motion blur of insects flying and their wings flapping. But what do you guys think?
人体の病気になった部分は他の健康な部分よりも体温が低くなってるって。腎臓の体温を奪えばダメージで血尿が。ロッツは他の動物の体温を自分の生体エネルギーにして活動している生物なんだ。
So what I think Emporio is talking about here is something called thermographic imaging. Now, this isn't something we routinely use in the UK, but my understanding of it as a science is that it helps to tell us if there's areas of the body that aren't getting an adequate circulation, and this might indicate an underlying disease process, like narrowing of blood vessels. Now, it's definitely an interesting idea, we just haven't yet been able to establish it as a tool to use it in our medical practice.
全ての生命を司っている位置、脳幹の体温だ。首の後ろ第一頸椎骨より奪う。
Yep, so the brainstem is part of the brain that helps to send signals to the rest of your body to help regulate things like your balance, breathing, and your heart rate. Now, brainstem death is when a patient who's on artificial life support has no brain functions, and so if that life support machine was turned off, they would die. Let's hope this guy doesn't do that to Jolyne.
血の中には視床という目の神経に関係する部分が、お前の息とともにロッツが入り込んで体温を奪えるのだ。視床にダメージを与えた。お前にはもう俺の姿を捉えることはできない。
Gosh, we're covering a lot of neuroscience today, but the thalamus is the part of the brain that processes all of your sensory input from your external environment before sending it onto the brain's cortex for interpretation. So if you did have an issue with your thalamus, this would distort your interpretation of your surrounding environment, which accounts for Jolyne's visual disturbance.
今足をくじいたのか。
違うんだ。気にしないでくれ。これは生まれつきなんだ。左足の指が曲がって生まれてきたんだって。だが歩くのに別に問題はないんだ。
So it sounds like Pucci suffers from a condition called congenital curly toes, where his toes bend in. Now, this is thought to be due to the tendons under the toe being too tight. They subsequently pull in the toe under the sole. Now, if this isn't causing any problem, it can just be left alone, and for the most part, children grow out of it with stretches and exercise. However, seemingly, Pucci's still remains. He might want to get surgery on that.
ウェザーリポートが放つ虹は今、天候レベルのサブリミナル効果となって街中の人間の心の中に入り込んできている。カタツムリの映像が混じっているのか。
So yes, subliminal messaging is a real thing, and it might influence you to go out and buy something that you might not have thought you needed. But can it turn you or make you feel like a snail? Definitely not. Likewise, hypnotherapy without any psychedelics can't make you think you're a chicken or a monkey.
素早くなくてもいい。確実に作れば、単純に作れば。吹き上げて冷気によって乾燥させて固めている。大量に地面に飛び散った血を槍にして。
Now that's a very creative way to attack your opponent. Interestingly, blood freezes at -3 degrees Celsius, so you may be asking yourself, why doesn't it freeze when we're out in the cold weather? Well, it's all got to do with vasoconstriction, where we redirect our blood flow to the warmer, more insulated parts of our body, where metabolic metabolism is occurring and we generate heat. Yep, so this is exactly what would happen in increased gravity. However much you guys might want to believe that training under gravity like Goku may strengthen your bones, our bodies can probably only withstand up to 5 times the gravity of Earth. To put this into perspective, let's say you're a man that weighs 110 pounds and you're in 5 times gravity. Just to stand up from a sitting position would be like trying to squat 320 pounds. How many of you think you can do that?
表があるから裏返る。裏も表もなければ裏返りはしない。裏も表もない無限の輪。
糸でなら作れる。
This is a very creative and clever way to use the stand power. Theoretically, if Jolyne's body was made up of string like this, then it makes complete sense that she could nullify the effects of gravity this way. But this would also make her one of the most overpowered characters in the season so far. She'd be able to withstand any attack simply through contorting herself around her enemies.
傷口の出血は止まっていないのにでももう乾き始めているでタッチがすぐにジョリーあんたの顔の血も固まってボロボロに剥がれ落ちている
Okay, so with Maiden Heaven accelerating time in this way, this would rapidly increase your coagulation time, or the time taken for you to produce a clot. Now, in medicine, we normally assess this using a measure called your prothrombin time, and the time normally sits between 11 to 13 seconds. However, in this scene, we're definitely looking at an acceleration of this time, which is accounting for why her active bleeding is drying out so quickly. So, if I understand Maiden Heaven correctly, it has an impact on non-biological things. So in this instance, it's having an effect of his dental implants, which are made out of a synthetic product, and that's why they're dropping out of his mouth, as opposed to him aging up. So I guess had they been his own teeth, they probably would have remained in place. But this is still quite a confusing concept, because I don't quite understand why Jolyne's blood is drying up so quickly, as it's biological.
これは立てない。
本で読んだことがある。生物にとって最も身近にある猛毒は空気であると。
Yeah, so I guess oxygen can be considered a toxin, but you're probably wondering how. Well, it has to do with oxygen's ability to break down into substances called oxygen-free radicals. Now, these are highly active substances that dot around like crazy. What they do is they irritate and react with all the surrounding tissues, causing a process called oxidative stress, which ends up damaging cells.
生き物が生きるためには酸素が必要だ。だがその濃度は 40% 以下でなくてはならない。 100% 純粋な酸素は猛毒で。
Yeah, so remember in the Earth's atmosphere, oxygen makes up 21% of the air we breathe in. And Emporio is correct here that the maximum tolerated concentration of oxygen is anywhere between 40 to 50%. Above this, you start to get that process of oxidative stress that we spoke about before. Okay, so according to my calculations, Araki's scientific accuracy score comes down to 82%. And what this allows me to do is to give him an unofficial stamp of my unofficial approval that this is unofficially an accurate anime. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If there's any other anime series that you'd like me to fact check, or in fact if there's any other seasons of this anime, then let me know down below. Otherwise, in the meantime, I wish you a happy Christmas, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.